what we want to move on to next is the opportunities. So for our next panel, we have our two sponsors, Aave and OmiseGO, and different products, but also kind of a lot to cover. I'm sure you guys know a lot of projects in this space as well. So maybe we can kind of kick things off by, if you guys want to give a short intro about yourself?
Yeah. Okay. I'm keenly aware that I stand between you and your next course. So we are OmiseGO. We are the premier implementation of production grade plasma. And we are layer 2 scaling solution.
My name is Kani. I'm from Aave, actually. So, yeah, we were building decentralized finance-related products, and we built the first lending protocol in Ethereum called ETHLend. That was 3 years ago, and now still keeping building DeFi products. Yeah.
Okay, great. So to kick things off, both of you have been in the DeFi space, let's say, like probably longer than most, because we were both from sort of the 2017, 2018 time. So what have you seen change, and what are the biggest opportunities now in DeFi in terms of products or the things that you're working on?
I think when we started was roughly our mainnet was 2017 in the beginning, and it was kind of pretty difficult. I mean, if you think about ETHLend, for example, there was no stable coins back in the day, so kind of like the lending as a use case was very, very limited. And I think today when we look at the space, it's kind of like an ecosystem. So DeFi did exist, what I saw back a couple of years ago, but I think now there's an actual ecosystem and actual people dedicated to building products on DeFi. And the very interesting part is now that you have like a base layer of very critical products. I mean, there's basically there's stable coins, there's lending protocols, and now we kind of see a lot of second layer of the DeFi products that actually use different infrastructure DeFi products. And that's the kind of like thing we call, or someone calls, money Legos, and I think that's pretty cool. But I think what we have done now, pretty much, is we have looked always like to the traditional finance and seeing like what kind of products there are, and basically copy pasted into DeFi. And some of them work very well actually. Then there's a bit of projects that want to get the kind of I mean, DeFi is hot, right? I mean, everyone's talking about it. There's like DeFi dinner, DeFi drinks. There's probably like all kinds of DeFi stuff going on. But the thing is, like, many people want to kind of take an advantage of the space in a way, because it's, in a way, I would say, kind of a field that is very popular now. And I think what is actually now interesting to see is like what is actually very like decentralized. And there was talks in DevCon about like how we can get the D back to like DeFi, and that's that's interesting.
On our end, coming from the other side, I think what's been really interesting in the past couple of years is just the maturation of layer 2 scaling solutions, and I feel like they've been maturing sort of alongside a lot around the application layer. So a bunch of DeFi projects that are sort of gaining a lot of traction, a lot of mass. We're about to run into each other. I think like you have Tether coming in as an ERC20 token, taking up the transaction space.
Oh shit!
And so then you have this explosion, sort of like almost a Cambrian explosion of DeFi projects. I think we're excited to see some of those projects move into a layer 2 infrastructure, and so we are here for you.
One thing I actually wanted to ask, we all kind of are here at Unite in some respects the Ethereum banner. That's why DevCon exists, and I guess why OFFDevcon exists. But is there much interest to go outside of Ethereum, or do you think DeFi is, it's the narrative and people are loyal to the Ethereum network?
So my CEO asked me to say something controversial, so I think we support Tezos, you know. But actually we support, I think DeFi is actually applicable to any ecosystem that wants to try to address this problem. I think let me say the maximalism in the space feels counterproductive at this point because we're so early. And I think we can all band together and try to move this whole thing along. It's a big uphill fight. And so like, I think a lot of these ecosystems are optimized for slightly different things. And so I think there's room that, I mean like it's not a zero-sum game at this point. So I see projects like Maker starting to move off. I see projects like Gitcoin starting to move off, and I think it's great. So I don't think there's any need for us to feel sort of like, I think we're all under the same mission here. So I think we don't necessarily need to be under a single banner. Our banner is this whole decentralized financial system is what we're trying to build.
I'm afraid to say something non-controversial, and I must say no, we should not go into different blockchains. But I think, in my opinion, it's kind of like not all blockchains are equal. I mean, there's like EOS, and I mean, the thing what that is and the rest of the bullshit. But the thing is, what I feel is that like what comes from like the blockchain is the security of the network, and I think that Ethereum has very good security. There's of course better security like Bitcoin, but there's no smart contracts. And the fact that there is smart contracts, that basically brings us, people, the developers here, basically to build things and build financial products, because without them, there's nothing to build. And yeah, I definitely think that stuff like EOS and all the stuff where there's like 20 validators, that's for me that's bullshit, and I hope not to expand into those blockchains, and I hope you guys will not do that either. And I think we all have to consider that as we are in the Ethereum community, we are kind of like a winners, and like we really need to focus on Ethereum because that's where the security is, and it's here because of us and people who are building here and trying to kind of like influence like what it will be in the future.
But what if you look at decentralization the way it's like not just about the separate blockchains, like every additional decentralized network adds to decentralization?
That's a good one, because it's kind of like, if I think, I will not comment too much Tezos because I never had interest in it, but I'm always joking more about EOS, and it's kind of like having, in terms of like finance, we used to have LIBOR, which is basically the kind of like way to agree on a interest rate on a global level. So it's kind of like a system where 20 bankers meet in London and basically have a dinner or a lunch and basically agree on an interest rate, which all of you guys will pay across globally, right? So I kind of see EOS the same thing, so it's not that decentralized, and what I would like to see is more that actually everyone who participates in the network, whether it's basically me or someone else around the world, and I mean anyone who participate, not just like the small amount of people. But I still think there should be competitions between blockchains, so that's kind of like what's the flip side of the coin is, and I really hope that I don't know. Yeah.
I'll agree with you there. I think the competition is really helpful.
Yeah. So to kind of build on that, Stanley, you mentioned smart contracts as kind of the basis. What can and can't be built right now with the current tech or the current brain power of humans, maybe? Is there anything from the FI world that can't be built in DeFi?
I think pretty much soon everything is what we have in DeFi. There's already credit default swaps. We in Aave build basically interest rate swaps and to switch between variable to fixed interest rates. And I think like pretty much everything can be replicated. The problem is, the very problem is with DeFi, which people argue on a daily basis in Twitter, is that kind of like with smart contracts you can build trustless products. So basically you are interacting with trustless system, right? And some of the stuff that's in DeFi is basically based on trust, because trust is kind of cheaper, because once you trust someone, you basically have credit, and the credit is based on how much you trust each other. So the next problem is, or kind of like weird thing is that then we are adding, like, we're tokenizing things and kind of getting more like trust into tokens and then into the ecosystem, which is a good thing because kind of like those things could be used in different kind of smart contracts and decentralized finance products because I mean, if you can tokenize, for example, debt and use that tokenized debt, you can use it as a collateral and you might have lower loan-to-value ratios. That's a pretty cool thing. But I think still there's a lot of things that can be built because somehow the smart contract could build kind of provide efficiency. So I mean, it's kind of like you can transfer value very quickly. You can have very good price discovery in secondary market. So yeah, I think some of these guys will build something cool.
So I think the thing that might be hard to build in a smart contract is some high-frequency trading environment.
Right.
Unless you use EOS, right?
I mean, even
That's right.
I was thinking more on unless you use OmiseGO.
Yeah, actually, that's the same solution, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, so most things can be built then is what I'm taking away from that. One thing I look at, so there's websites like DeFi Pulse, there's DeFi Prime, I don't know if you're familiar with both of these, and then there's various people shouting on Twitter about Ether's money and the future of DeFi, but how, especially with some maybe things like lending, how are we actually going to get wider adoption? I mean, it's cool that everybody's staking or lending within the crypto ecosystem, but how are we going to get that out there? And like, what are your teams doing to kind of help that?
Yeah, we kind of we can extend lending to a certain extent because our use case is pretty much like so-called Lombard loans that we have in traditional finance, where wealthy people stake their share portfolio to get working capital or to leverage up. So basically, you can do something like that with smart contracts in trustless environment, right? And what we are doing, we are trying to kind of like bring that, well, not bring that, we have been, everyone's doing that now, kind of like in a environment where people hold cryptographic assets. And one thing which is very interesting, there's, for example, one project called Centrifuge. This guys here as well from Venmo started them. They basically are tokenizing debt and real assets, and which means that basically those could be used as a collateral. So we could see, in, for example, in our lending tools, and you could basically collateralize houses and basically real assets and debt and so forth. So that kind of takes this spectrum a bit larger, but interesting also what it takes is it brings kind of like trust into the trustless ecosystem, because if you think about the whole economy, like US dollar is based on trust. So if you don't trust US dollar, basically even DAI is fucked, right? So it's kind of like interesting value proposition for scaling. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you touching on the bridge between what we're doing here in this space and sort of the traditional world. I think a lot of that whole work will unlock the next group of people. I think things like tokenized assets on chain, I think that's super interesting. I think projects like Monolith are super interesting, trying to bridge into traditional payment networks. I think like everyone in the room is like, I think thinking and talking about regulations. Like those are all the kinds of things like that will open the next step to like unlock the next group of people to come in. I think it's like meeting people where they are now. So
one thing I want to say is that how can the ecosystem help each other? I mean, I think people are all sat around at tables, but are there any other things that people can do? Can we do DeFi-DevCon, or like, how can we DeFi-Con.
DeFi-Con.
Can somebody check GoDaddy? Is that available?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think.
And the money Legos are where it's at, right? That's the interesting thing, right? And then for us on layer 2, what's interesting is like moving those money Legos to layer 2, and so that they never have to leave that environment. That's also super cool. And like we would want to work with basically all of you to try to figure out how we can do that kind of thing and provide the same kind of security that you would expect in the root chain with much more scale.
Yeah, I think there's like the entry level kind of is pretty interesting because like what's happening here now in Ethereum, especially, is that people are building actually financial products, and most of the guys who are building is kind of like might not be financial people. I mean, there might be developers, and for example, I myself, I don't have any financial background, and I'm basically building lending products. Sounds scary. I mean, it sounds scary in traditional finance, but kind of like, I mean, that's how it is. And people are building credit default swaps, interest rate swaps, lending products, and everyone who are building, they have different kinds of various backgrounds. And when I started in Lend, our first product, I was still in college, so it's kind of like shows like that the entry level is very low, which actually brings more innovation. And I think that's
democratization.
Exactly.
Great, guys. Well, thank you for a great talk. One last question, which I did ask on the last panel. What is your favorite DeFi project and why? But you can't choose your own.
So I just learned about long short die. Do you guys know about this? This is so crazy. I don't actually understand what it does, but I think it's really fun. So apparently, like you can take long and short positions on variations on interest rates on die. It's so great. I love it. I don't understand it at all, but it's awesome.
It's very niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's been so many projects. Maybe, I mean, people always talk the DeFi projects that there are now. I like one project that basically has been killed already. Variable. It was a consensus project, and they basically did kind of like contracts from different institutions, and from those positions, basically stable coins. But the project doesn't exist anymore. I think it was pretty cool, and yeah, and of course, OmiseGO is pretty interesting as well. Thanks.
Okay, guys. Thank you for a good chat, and on to the third course.